So in this class, we'll discuss about functions in C language. So what is a function? In this class, we'll try to discuss what are all the concepts like introduction, advantages of function, types of functions, components of functions, and how many ways we can write the definition of a function, and different types of parameters and return data type, and what are the different parameter passing techniques we'll try to use. So let us start with the presentation. What is a function? Introduction. So function is a subprogram which will perform subtask. What is a function? A block of code which will perform a particular task. A program is a collection of functions. Always a program can have n number of functions, but one of them must be minimum. And minimum it will have one function that also must be minimum. So whatever number of functions the program have, program execution always begins from minimum. Dividing a complex problem into small piece of functions is, which will reduce the complexity. So a larger program is divided into small pieces called as functions. And finally, the function is a group of statements that together performs a task. And every C program, minimum it will have one function, and that must be main because execution begins from main. Advantages of functions. So the advantages are modularity, reusability, easy to understand, write, test, compile, and execute, and reduces the complexity are the basic advantages of functions. So the big program is divided into small piece of modules using a divide and conquer approach. And program will be written once and executed n number of times. And program can be function can be called n number of times, which will reduce the complexity. Using a function which will reduce the complexity because a small piece of function can be easy to write, easy to test the errors, easy to debug, easy to execute, and easy to modify without affecting the entire program. Any function can call any function. Usually, main will call all other functions, but any function can call any function. Sometimes function will call itself also. That is called as recursion. Next, types of functions. Functions are two types: system-defined functions and user-defined. System-defined functions are also called as built-in functions or library functions, where user-defined functions are defined by the program. Predefined functions where the library functions declarations are there in the header file, where the body is in the DLL format, dynamic link library format. Whereas in the user-defined functions, we can write a customized logic of the function definition so that it is easy to write. In the user-defined function, all the components of the function are written by program. Whereas in the system-defined function, definition and declaration already ready in the header file. Only we need to add the header file and we have to call. So the types of functions are two: predefined and user-defined functions. Components of functions. Basically, function will have three components: function definition, function prototype or declaration, and function call. What is definition, what is prototype, and what is function call? Let's see in detail. The syntax of the function definition is return data type, space function name, and list of arguments. And in the flower brackets, we will try to write the code and we'll end up with return state. Let us see an example of function definition. What is a function definition actually? A definition is the actual code of the function. When the function is called, this definition will get executed. In the definition only, we will try to write what we want to execute. Example in this small piece of code, int is the return data type, get area of square is a function name, and side is the parameter. And inside the function, we are calculating area, and we are declaring a local variable area, and area will calculate using side into side. And after that, we will return area. Return is a keyword used to return a value from the function. So the definition will consist of 6 elements. What are they? Function name, function type, and list of parameters, local variable declaration, function statements, and return statements. All 6 elements are grouped into two parts, function header and function. In the function header, we will have return data type, space function name, and list of parameters. Whereas in the actual definition will be embedded in pair of lower brackets where we will write list of local variables, function statements, and return statement. The first three are function header and the second three are function body. Next, function prototype. What is a function prototype? A prototype helps you to inform the compiler that so and so function is available in your program, so that whenever this function is called, we can inform and execute. Usually, the header of the function definition is function prototype, where in the function prototype we have 3 elements only: return data type, space function name, and list of parameters terminated by semicolon. In this example, where int sum list of parameters are int x comma int y, and we will terminate. Definition will be written at the middle of the program, whereas prototype is used to inform the compiler regarding the function. Function call. What is a function call? Function call is a whenever we call the function, control will transfer from function call to function definition, executes, and comes. So what is the syntax of function call? Function name terminated by semicolon. The function name in the brackets you will have a list of parameters. Usually whenever a function is called, we have in the function will execute in following way. First, operating system will call main function. When we try to execute, OS will call main function. Once main function is executed, the control will go on executing one by one. Then main function will call another function. So whenever a function call invoked, the control transfer from function call to function definition. In the following example, where square function is called, then the control transfer from call to definition in the second box. Once the definition executed, then it will go back to the next statement of function call and main function will be terminated and end of the C program. In the following example, we are illustrating 3 components of the function: function prototype, function call, and function definition. Here, my function is informed to the compiler saying that there is one function called as my function. And in the main, we are calling my function. Whenever a function call is executed, control transfer to the definition of the code, executes, and comes back. There are 2 types of parameters. So when we are discussing about components of functions, we are in encounter with parameters. What is the use of parameters actually? Parameters are used for communication between the functions, because variables declared in one function will not be accessible from other functions. Their scope and life is restricted to local function only. That's why parameters are used for communication between the functions. Usually parameters are 2 types: actual parameters, formal parameters. What are actual parameters? What are formal parameters? Actual parameters are listed in the function call, whereas formal parameters are listed in the function definition. Here, actual parameters are there in the function call. Function name and actual parameters are listed, whereas in the formal parameters are there in the function definition. What is the basic difference between actual parameters and formal parameters? Usually, actual parameters are names are mentioned, whereas the formal parameters, the parameters names are with data. In the example where 10, 20 are actual parameters, when the function is called, add function is called, 10, 20 is passed as a parameter. So the 10, 20 values are passed to the definition. And in the function definition, formal parameters are defined, where 10 value is copied to A and 20 value is copied to B. So actual parameters are listed in the function call. Formal parameters are listed in function definition. Usually, arguments and parameters both are same. Most of the textbooks will also say argument and parameters both are same. But technically, parameter means which is with data type. So parameter means what? Formal parameter, where it is receiving a value with data. Whereas argument means sending a value. But technically, parameter means receiving and arguments means sending. But both are used in the same context. We will say actual arguments, actual formal arguments, or actual parameters or formal parameters. In the example, if you observe, A, B, S are actual parameters which are declared in the main function, where AB is passed as actual parameters when the sum function is invoked. Whereas in the sum function, x and y are formal parameters. If you observe, x and y are declared in the function definition part. That's why they are called as formal parameters and they are receiving the value of A and B. A separate memory is allocated for actual parameters and formal parameters, where modification made to one copy will not reflect to another. So x and y are formal arguments and A and B are actual arguments. And both are there in the different function contexts. The difference between, as we discussed, the difference between parameter and argument. Parameter is a variable defined by method that receives values when the method is called. Whereas an argument is a value what is passed to a method when it is invoked. So as we discussed, actual parameter means what? When the function is invoked, we are sending a value that is called as argument. And what is a parameter? When the function is invoked, the actual parameter is passed and the values are received by formal parameters with data type. So whenever we pass a value from one function to another function, we have to use actual parameters and formal parameters. So in this example, where we have two functions, main function and add numbers function. A and B are formal parameters and N1 and N2 are actual parameters. N1 value is copied to A and N2 value is copied to B when the function is invoked. Once the function is executed, the return value is written. So result is calculated and written. Here, what is the return here? Return is a keyword which will return a value from the function. After the execution of the definition, the value will be returned to the calling function so that the answer will be returned. So where that answer will be stored back in the sum. So using a return keyword, we can return one value from the function definition. So in the one more example also here we are illustrating. Using a return keyword, once the definition is complete, value is returned. Usually, return statement is the last statement of the function because after the return statement, control goes back to the function. Here, we can define the function in different ways because in the function communication where we are related with parameters and return. Using parameters, they will communicate, whereas using return value, the answer will be returned. So we can define the function in 4 different ways. Without any arguments and without any parameters and no return value, no arguments and with return value, with arguments and no return value, with arguments and return value. So let's see one by one example. Here, the first program, what we want to discuss is without any parameters and without any return value. Here we are using two functions, main function and add function. So the main function is calling a add function. Simply control is transferred from main function to add function. There itself, the activity of accepting AB values, adding them, displaying is performed. Then simply at the end of the definition, control will go. Here we are not using any return statement. That's why in the return data type, we are writing void. Void is a data type which means nothing. So whenever we are not returning anything, void as it is used as a return type. So this example illustrates function without any parameter and without any return value. Here we are not passing anything and not receiving anything. And the second way of writing a function is function with arguments but no return value. Function with no return type but with arguments. So here we are passing the arguments but we are not getting any value back. Here we are declaring two variables in the main function. We are calling add function and AB are passed as a parameters. So AB are actual parameters where X and Y are the formal parameters and they are receiving the values. The result is calculated and here itself the result is printed. The value is not returned using a return key. That's why we are writing a return data type as void. Here we are passing the parameters, but we are not receiving any value from the function. In the third category, we are passing the parameters as well as we are receiving the arguments also. So in this example, A and B passed as a parameters when we are calling an add method, where they are received by X and Y. The result is calculated and returned. X plus Y will be calculated and the answer will be returned. Here we are using parameters as well as return keyword. And in the fourth category, what we want to write is, we are not passing anything, but we are returning a value. In this example, add function is called without any parameters, where control is transferred from add function to main function to add function. Here we declare three variables, we'll accept values, and the result is calculated as sum C is equal to A plus B, and it is returned using a return keyword. So the C value is returned to add, where that is stored in the result variable and it is getting printed. So as per the examples, the same function definition can be written in four different ways, using and without using parameters and return data. But if you observe, the functions are communicating with the help of parameters. So while passing parameters, we have to use some technique. So in this example, we are calling add number function where we are passing the values. So the question is, when we are passing the arguments, is there any technique? Yes, we have a technique. There are some parameter passing techniques. So there are two parameter passing techniques in this context, call by value and call by address. So the call by address is also called as call by pointers or call by. First, call by value. In call by value mechanism, a separate copy of memory is allocated for actual parameters and formal parameters. Modification made to one copy will not reflect to another copy because they don't need each other. So multiple values cannot be written and memory is wasted in this technique. But it is the most easiest technique where it is a default technique of parameter passing technique. So the advantage is easy, but the disadvantage is memory wastage and multiple values cannot be written because we know already using a return keyword, we can return only one value. In call by address mechanism, separate memory will not be allocated for actual parameters and formal parameters. Common memory is shared between actual and formal parameters. So instead of sending a values, we will send address and we will use the concept of pointers in this technique, where the disadvantages of call by value technique is solved. So indirectly multiple values can be returned and as well as memory is not wasted because common memory used for actual and formal. So in the next session, we will try to discuss in detail about call by value mechanism with detailed programs and call by address mechanism with detail. Any questions and any doubts, we will try to discuss in chat. Thank you so much. See you in the next class.